Chasing Elite podcast, and it's definitely a special one, and one that Coach Griff and I have had to work hard to get. A lot of communication back and forth. We had a lot of people that wanted him to come on here. He was definitely one of our first targets, and we started asking the question.
I was your first.
First
target.
Right
there. I might be fourth.
Target.
I might be fourth in the recording order, but I'm pretty sure I was the first ask. So
yes,
I played a little hard to get.
And it shows how influential you've been in a lot of careers of a lot of coaches, because when we asked that question towards the end of the podcast to our first three guests, they've all said we got to have you on here. So we're finally making it happen. So Coach Feit, thanks for being here, and in a second I'll have you introduce yourself, but first I kind of wanted to lay the foundation and give a little story of your impact on me and my career, and kind of I'm sure others feel the same. I remember
are we going to start in your first class with me, your spring semester of your senior year in strength conditioning?
No, we don't want to start there. I was going to talk more about.
All right, I just want to make sure.
No, the end of the semester.
Griff's like, I'd love to hear about that one.
Yeah, let's get into that.
That's for off air. No, but end of my senior year, I remember I decided to enroll in the graduate program, and you sat me down, kind of at an exit meeting, and I was telling you that this is what I want to do, and I had class with you, and I remember you telling me, like, if this is something that you're going to do and you're serious about, you got to pick it up. It was kind of a kick in the ass, and it was a kick in the ass I needed. I remember when I left to take the job and left early, I thanked you for, kind of that push. You always pushed your students to get the most out of them. So, I'm thankful for you. I know Coach Griff is. I know, the rest of the Springfield alumni are, and, we're happy to have you here. So thanks for being here, Coach Feit. Please introduce yourself for those that don't know.
We're happy to be here. And I will, before I do that, everything's context dependent, right? So to Caden's credit, my first year teaching and our first class together, Caden, was during baseball season during COVID.
Yes.
So yes, the argument went forth of, if you really want to do this, you should expect more out of yourself. I should expect more out of you. But I also know it's a challenging time, right? When you take a very high level class during an in-season, and football's the worst in the fall with all the travel, and baseball's the worst in the spring, because all of a sudden, it rains, and now you got to change the game, and then it moves this class and that class. So to your credit, Caden, good foundation. But again, that's when you start off at such a level like that, there's always going to be more. And you guys know this, and my students know this now as program director at Springfield College. Like I say this a million times, is the standard is the standard. And a lot of times in coaching, and maybe we get into it later, but it's even in teaching, where I'm dual role. How do I blend in my 20 years of coaching experience into the classroom? And whether we can say kids these days, or we can just say adults these days, the fact of the matter is, like, you have to have standards, and you can't treat everybody equally, but you got to treat everybody fairly. But the standard should be the standard. But in terms of who I am, I'm not going to waste any time on that, Caden. Okay. I've done a lot of podcasts, so this can go on for 15, 20 minutes. Okay. If you don't know who I am, and this is not a flex, I try to keep my LinkedIn profile updated. Check me out on there. I think it's LinkedIn, Coach Adam Feit, on Instagram, AE Feit, on the Springfield College website. Take some lessons from that, do a little bit of recon on yourself. But in my current role, I am the new program director of our Applied Exercise Science program at Springfield College in my 5th year as an assistant professor. First year as program director, I'm also the strength conditioning fieldwork coordinator for both our undergrad and graduate strength conditioning programs. So that's my full-time day-to-day operations. And then before all that kicks off, and then after school, I'm also the co-owner of a private facility with my wife, the original and the authentic Dr. Feit. And her and I run that, which birthed out, again, everything comes from a garage or basement, but we started a garage gym during the pandemic, and all of a sudden that blew from 4 kids to 30 kids to 60 kids to our town inspector saying, hey, you might need to, you might not need to, I'm requiring you to move out. So we own and operate a gym on the side. And then I do a lot of work in the sports psychology space. I'm the mental performance coach for our AHL Springfield Thunderbirds, which is the affiliate of the St. Louis Blues. I do some work in Summer League Baseball, work with some professional strongmen and strongwomen clients. So as Caden and Griff said earlier, yeah, definitely busy, but very grateful for the opportunity here. And thanks for moving around my schedule quite a bit to make this happen.
And I think what makes you so unique is how well-rounded you are. And you mentioned the sports psych case, and that's kind of the piece I want to dive into first. I know that was more recent. Obviously you have an extensive history and resume via strength conditioning. You've worked at all levels, all sectors. But I kind of want to dive into why did you decide to go back to school and learn more about sports psych? Where does that play into, your then career and then now?
Yeah, great question. And I think we all have like our origin stories, right? Mine in strength conditioning was I had a broken arm in high school, was on the sidelines feeling sorry for myself and talking with my athletic trainer, right? And I think a lot of our origins come from, especially in strength conditioning, right, is kind of one of two areas. One, you had some sort of traumatic injury, right? Maybe it was career ending, maybe it was season ending, or you had a coach that you were glad you had, or you wish you had, right? We all reflect on now of as we're coaching now. Am I coaching the way that I would want to be coached? Am I coaching the way that I've been coached? Whatever the case may be. So I really had kind of two major pivot points in getting me to understand and appreciate sports psychology. The first one was when I was working full-time with Precision Nutrition. And at the time, it was the world's largest coaching company, software company, certification company in the world. I mean, it was fantastic. And I was there for 5 years. But what they did really well was they didn't focus on nutrition coaching from, does it fit your macros, right? What diet are you on? Everything was behavior psychology based. Everything was rooted in why do people eat? Why do people not eat? What are these relationships and these feelings and these emotions that come up with food? And I didn't know it at the time, but a lot of the derivatives and a lot of the variations in sport psychology now is exactly that. It's a cognitive triangle, right? How are my thoughts impacting my feelings, and how are my feelings impacting my behaviors, and so forth. So at the time, I didn't really understand how much was going in behind these decisions, but it led me to the next big piece is when I was essentially in the NFL, and I met with a sports psychologist, right? I had gotten to the top. I was 25 years old, the youngest or one of the youngest strength conditioning coaches in the NFL. And I was going through my own stuff. It was identity transition for my wife. It was a career transition for both of us. We were now in a new town. We were getting married. We bought a house. We got pregnant. Like a lot of things were happening. And I remember meeting with him and talked about a lot of things. And that's when it kind of really solidified that in my work with PN of realizing mental skills and sports psychology, they shouldn't be separate sessions, right? They're baked into everything that we do. And I think that is my mission right now in life and what I speak a lot at conferences and clinics. I'm very fortunate to do that. I enjoy presenting. I enjoy getting in front of a stage and getting you, like you are all right now, nodding your heads in either agreement or just like mind blown, right? I love that stuff. But there's a misnomer, there's a misunderstanding that sports psychology is, let's sit in a room and talk about our feelings. It's not that. It can turn into that depending on, and I think you guys have touched on this quite a bit in your previous podcast about the idea of the coach-athlete relationship. But my mission is trying to help coaches and even sports psychology practitioners understand the value in bridging this integration in what we now call high performance, right? Whether you're in your organization, Caden, or Griff, you're at your school, we've often become victim of sitting in silos, right? We think what we think, they think what they think. Well, they don't understand what we do and so forth. And you work in enough places like I have in the last 20 years at every level from the elite to Division III to working, as Hunter was talking about, 8 to 18-year-olds, which I think he stole from me, but I'll save that for the next time I see him. But whatever the case may be, sports psychology, we're looking at the relationship between performance and the mind and performance. It's a two-way relationship, right? How are these thoughts and feelings impacting my performance? And then how is my performance or lack thereof impacting what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling? So for me, how I implement it and how it all came to fruition was it's about now more than ever, how are we cueing athletes? How are we giving feedback? And I think a big thing that gets overlooked is how we're structuring our training environments. There's a big push on autonomy supportive coaching. I'm a huge fan of that. And I think you guys have spoken at that in previous discussions. But there also has to be a level of structure and to allow them to realize that. And I look at autonomy supportive coaching very much like velocity-based training, right? You've got to earn the right to look at a speed of a bar and then cut somebody off. You've got to earn the right to train in those zones. And as we talked about, and Griff, you were in class last year, like I think a lot of us in the industry have lost sight of the true foundational principles, right? Whether it's progressive overload or it's specificity or whatever the case may be. And so I remember going back to school for sports psychology in my mid-30s and realizing, and I remember I had this and I was talking with a classmate of mine, I'm like, this is what you call it? Like, I just call this good coaching. And they were like, yeah, like now you just have to understand the names of these terms, right? And how it's viewed in literature. So now as I try to bridge that gap between sport coaches and strength coaches and sports psychology practitioners and everybody that's involved in the training of the athlete, I'm always asking myself like two real big things. One is, what is the athlete experiencing? And I think we miss out on that so much in strength conditioning because it's a factory assembly line, right? It's one group and then it's the next group. And we don't really actually make intentional time to really ask ourselves this, right? How are they receiving my coaching? And I go back to one of the questions Dr. T always asks that comes from Joe Ehrman's book, Inside Out Coaching, is what is it like to be coached by me? And how am I presenting myself? How am I posturing myself? How, as you guys both learned as GAs, one of the biggest skills I recommend all people at your level is how do you lead your peers, right? How do you lead people that are in the same program as you, but now they're technically your intern? How do you give up enough freedom of your own coaching and because your confidence is at a level that's still trying to develop? But how do we position ourselves? So what are the athletes experiencing? What are my other coaches and peers experiencing? And then I think the other big one is, what skill do they need right now? Is it confidence? Is it better focus? Is it emotional regulation, which I can tell you is one of the number one things that all of us can benefit? Is it this idea of trust? And when we look at mental skills or psychological skills and whatnot, I try to make it down like easy as possible, right? And Caden, I'll go to you and then Griff in terms of track. But Caden, when a coach tells you have to work on some skills, rattle off a couple skills in baseball terms.
As an athlete?
As an athlete, right? Coach sits you down for an exit eval. Hey, not a bad season. I'm going to send you to summer ball to get better, whatever the case may be. Or we're going to send you down to the minors. Here are a couple of the skills I want you to work on. So give me the top 3 to 5 skills in baseball that you need to be able to do.
Hit, throw.
All right, so there's hitting. What else? Fielding. Throwing. And then Griff, from your background in track and field, like what are some of the areas, right? Obviously the number one thing is like run faster or run faster longer, but what skills go into becoming a better runner?
Like block start for a sprinter or for the jumper, like their approach development and like targeting of the board. So making sure they're not fouling. So it's like, different types of skills, like they are skills, but it's not necessarily like the same in terms of like, I don't know. It's not like hand-eye coordination in terms of like it is for baseball,
sure.
I guess.
But you both pick up on a key thing here. All the skills, they're gerunds. They end in ing, right? You're throwing, you're developing, you're starting, you're approaching. And I guarantee you could take all of those physical skills that you have to take from a technical and tactical perspective and then tie in some element of sports psychology, right? So not fouling out, right? Is that an element of learning how to focus better, right? The idea of hitting, is it about concentration, right? And understanding where your attentional focus goes. The idea of confidence, right? And my research shows this, right? When I went back to school, like the number one qualities and skills that we're trying to develop in athletes is confidence, because confidence is bred by competence. If we put our athletes in situations where they are competent in, then that establishes or reestablishes and reaffirms their confidence in their ability to do the thing when we need them to do it most. And so as a dual performance coach, right, I think about as a coach, right, how can we ask better questions instead of using louder instructions? And I hate this terminology in the field, but, we have these notions of being a juice guy, all right, or a height coach, right? The louder you are, the better coach you are. That is 100% wrong. Do you need to have presence? Yes. Do you need to be able to command a room? Yes. I worked football for most of my early career, and that helped set a great foundation of leading a room and managing a staff. But as you start to work in the pros, or you start working with kids, or you start working at different levels, are you asking better questions instead of just barking and yelling out instructions, right? So those are just some simple ways there. Are you helping your athletes use language that builds ownership, not dependence? And I go back to this all the time. Guys, there was one day where you played your last game, where you ran your last meet. We do such I won't say incredible job. We do a more intensive job preparing athletes for the sport at the next level, right? You come into preseason. This is who your coaches are. These are where your services are. This is what this is what that is, etc. We do all this work onboarding you, but yet we've all sat in that locker room and it's like, well, that didn't go the way we wanted. Last time our team will be together as one. We'll see you at the banquet. Best of luck. Coaches are on the road recruiting, right? Whatever the case may be. And so I think a lot of the times, and this is going to be a project of mine if I get granted sabbatical in the next year or two, is really coming up with a tried and true athlete offboarding plan, because for so long our athletes are so dependent on us, right? And we've done it, right? They get done playing and they're like, okay, you got 2 weeks off. I don't know what to do. So this idea of guided discovery, this idea of autonomy, right? How can we help support athletes towards ownership of their own decisions, right? Agency of their choices and of the decisions that they make? Because I think a lot of times, and this is I'll throw a little shade at sport coaches, right? If kids get hurt, they automatically look at us, or they look at the athletic trainers. I'm like, well, athletic trainers have nothing to do with this, because they're the ones that hopefully help fix some of the things that happen, right? And so when we look at this idea of, are we creating so much dependence in our coaching structure with our athletic training environments, whatever the case may be, it all boils down to, how can we help them develop these skills? We can call them mental skills. They can be life skills. They can just be overall ways on learning how to respond instead of just reacting and performing. Because one day you're not going to perform for a crowd. You're not going to react to a message from coach, but you are going to have to respond to a boss, right? You are going to have to respond to a loved one. You are going to have to respond to a situation that happens in the real world. So I think the best part about sports psychology, and what I've learned working in professional baseball, working in professional hockey and the iron sports, is the idea of mental training. It works best when athletes actually don't realize they're doing mental training, right? It's very hard to be like, okay, now go check in with Coach Feit and do your mental check-in, right? I remember working with baseball a couple years ago, and they're just like, yeah, go check in with him, like, get your head right. And I'm like, we're missing the point, guys. Like, the evaluation and application of mental skills training doesn't happen as a one-off. It is a consistent slow drip in how we present ourselves and how our athletes perceive ourselves in their training in competitive environments.
Yeah, I think, just to go back to that point you made on, reacting versus responding, and it took some, self-reflection with me, just diving into, not only when I was an athlete, but just my day-to-day life. I was very quick to react to stressors, whatever it may be, and you don't realize it until you take a step back and
Sure.
dive into what that looks like. So I've made a conscious effort to, how am I responding to that stressor? And it's something that is very subconscious in the moment, but it adds up. And I think the way I was reacting to daily stressors in my life was impacting the way I was reacting on the field as well. And I didn't realize that until speaking with Coach Caitlin. Shout out to Coach Caitlin. But I took a large step forward after working with her. And I think a part of it was just her getting me to self-reflect and understand my actions and why I was doing them. So that point, and then you saying that, sports psychology doesn't need to be this, extra thing. It's embodied in you as an athlete, the way you act, the way you approach every day. It's working as one. Like I experienced that myself. And, I was definitely that person before that didn't understand how powerful it was until, I kind of took the time to work on it with her.
Yeah.
So.
And to challenge the notion of self-reflection, now is the typical time, right? We're finishing off 2025. We're getting ready for the new year. We are in such a rush of developing goals and setting goals, but we're not actually taking the time to reflect on why I didn't achieve the goals last year or last time. And that's why it's super important for all the coaches listening or watching this, is we pride ourselves on writing great programs, right? The sets, the reps, the intensities, the loads, the metrics, the KPIs, blah, blah, blah. But yet, when the phase is over or the season's over, are we actually taking that deliberate and intentional time to reflect on what went well, what didn't go well, and what do we actually need to do next time? And next year, are we going to revisit those notes? So now this is a call to action for everybody. Like, evaluate where you are in your career, evaluate where you are in your class, evaluate where you are in the social hierarchy of the health and fitness and strength conditioning industry. If we don't make time for deliberate reflection, how are we supposed to move forward with the deliberate intention of what we want to do next and how we're going to get there? And that's a thing I talk with sports psychology practitioners all the time, like this notion of smart goal setting. Like, it's really not smart, because you're not addressing two major areas. It's, well, why didn't I achieve the goal? So what were the obstacles? And what is my actual plan? Right? So we can go into advanced theories and goal achievement theory and motivation achievement theory and all that stuff. At the end of the day, are you doing the work to make the plan? And then, right, one of the best abilities as a strength conditioning coach is adaptability. And are you going to be able to adapt? And so, to Caden, to your point, right, why were you reacting instead of rationally and soundly responding? Did you need to hit the pause button? Did you need to take a breath? Did you need to remove yourself from the situation?
Right.
Do you need to exert some emotional suppression at times and then have the ability and confidence to express that emotion? And a lot of these things, it's not, here's what I've learned. It's not to discredit or undervalue the true nature of sports psychology. It is a good reminder that we do all this all the time. And are we willing to do the work to understand it better so that it produces more long-term substantial and compounded interest gains? And this is a call to action for all the strength conditioning coaches. And this was part of my research, right? If I asked you guys what sports psychology was, a lot of you said things like, I don't know, I think it's like therapy, or I think it's like psychiatry, or people talking about their feelings, or it's mental health. And it's like, no, it's not. And a lot of coaches get thrown off back to the stress and anxiety, right? Stress is stress. We love stress. We call ourselves stress managers as strength conditioning coaches, right? But if we don't learn how to manage that stress, that stressor that caused that stress now manifests into anxiety. And then, it's a slippery slope. Anxiety can turn into depression. It can turn into psychological conditions. But going back to like, what are my student athletes experiencing? Are you making time to observe and notice and reflect on that, right? Go back to the OODA loop, right? Are we, observing, orienting, deciding, acting? It's the same exact thing in psychology, right? Are you watching what needs to be watched? And I say this, and you've heard me say this. Are you standing where you need to stand so you can see what you need to see? Mm-hmm. The same thing goes with the behaviors and the motivations or lack thereof of your athletes. So I think we can all do a better job heading into the next year of being more mindful of our training environments and the people that we work around. Because I'll tell you what, if you say less and listen more, you're going to get a lot of the info that you need to become a better coach.
There's so much good stuff there, and like a million different directions that we could take that. But
I heard the quote the other day. I think it's, to build up what you just said, you got 2 ears and you got one mouth. You should probably listen more than you talk.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't heard that before, but it's real.
Because you're too busy talking, Coach.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're right.
But I think, the point about the reflection, I think so often as coaches, and, we live this a lot, but you get so caught up in the hurry of everyday life that we don't even build in time for the reflection to happen. We're so worried about today, I have this training session, I got to write this program. And we do it 6-7 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just trying to stay above water, and we're treading. And like, I think like for you now, Coach, like this downtime for you, this break, like this is a really nice time for you and for us, just because it allows us to take a step back and actually reflect on like, what have we done? Like you said, in 2025 or in the fall semester. Then the other point I want to build off of was the sports psych, like aspects of mental skills being built into training, because I think there's a stigma when you hear that there's going to be like we're going to have a sports psych session. We're going to bring in the sports psych professional. They're going to do a workshop with the team. Like there's already a stigma there of like you're being lectured to, and that's probably already causing more stress for kids than we realize. So I love the point you made about we're working on sports psych when kids don't even know we're working on sports psych. It's almost like you're tricking them into building these skills by building it into something that they enjoy doing, which is their sport.
And a big piece of that, let's be honest, right? How many times have we spent our times as strength conditioning coaches at practices being purposeless on the sidelines or in the dugout? Right. And I won't go into the whole like, well, we got to man the pit. We got to crush the injured guys. Right. I've been down that road before. But what a great opportunity. Yeah. What a great opportunity to now take in the surroundings and the environment and actually make notes. Right. Or that's something that isn't done enough. And guys, a lot of my time, and I face this in professional hockey right now. Okay. I have X amount of hours that I can go to the facility. I have X amount of hours that I can do one-on-one work, whatever the case may be. If I'm just there when somebody needs me, then it's an automatic, right, recognition of, oh, sports psych guy's here, right? Or, oh, he's talking to so-and-so, or he's talking to numbers. Back to being a generalist, right? And I've said this on a recent podcast as well, right? The jack of all trades may not be the master of anything. But the jack of all trades is always going to have a job because they can insert themselves at any table in any conversation. Almost all of my sports psych consulting and coaching happens when I'm hanging out with the strength coach in the weight room, because that's a natural environment for me. And then I'm hanging out in the locker room, and then I just like got done with practice. I'm at practice. And so the more accessible and the more universal I can make myself, they're not looking at me as a sports psych guy, right? They're not looking at me as a shrink or sports psychologist, because I'm neither. I am a certified mental performance consultant through our national organization, but I'm a guy that they can talk to, and they know that what's said to me stays with me, and it doesn't go to management, doesn't go to the coaches, and so forth. So a part of that, Griff, I think, is if we're there, we talked about one of the number one abilities is being the adaptability, but number two is the availability. And it's a strain on your family. It's a strain on, hey, you know, I've got practice today, right? I may only have 10 to 20 minutes of deliberate sports psych talk. But you know what that is? That's setting me up for long-term gains, because they're seeing me there all the time, right? They're dapping it up with me. We're asking about the holidays. We're asking about the families and so forth. So that idea of reflection, make your practice time more purposeful, right? Make your time that you're not have to train the athletes, actually do something with it. And that'll set you up for, back to Griff, I think what you were getting to, better introductions, right? Better debriefs after the end of a session, better objectives, better instructions, better staff management. But if we don't make in that time, I mean, that's going to be hard to do. And I think now trying to force cram it in, right? It's the end of the year, New Year's resolutions, all that great stuff. Maybe you're waiting too long, right? And if you can't do it yearly, break it down. It's back to segmentation, right? Maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's at the end of a season. Some days it might be 5 minutes at the beginning or 5 minutes at the end of the day, and figuring out, okay, what are my objectives today? How am I going to achieve them? What's in my way? And then before you tie down for the night, you're like, okay, how did I do? What was the scoreboard, and so forth.
Yeah. Coach, have you read Range by David Epstein?
I have. Yeah, it's on my bookshelf at school.
All right. That's
great book.
I haven't read it yet, but I've heard phenomenal things about it.
Yeah. And that idea, and I don't laugh about this, but I think about, well, I'll tell a quick story. So I remember interviewing for the job with the St. Louis Blues. And so obviously it's with the local affiliate there, but guys get called up and down all the time, right? So you're in pro sports. And I remember sitting there with Mary Kate, and I'm thinking, all right, the GMs from St. Louis are coming down to Springfield. We're going out to dinner. And instantly I'm thinking like, oh man, do I need to get a portfolio together? Right? Like I remember the class that you guys had done, right? Like I haven't updated that stuff in years, right? I don't have the logo. And I don't have the time. And I go, MK, what happens if they figure out I don't know anything about hockey? Right? Like when I did baseball last year, and I told the owner, I'm like, look, man, I stopped playing baseball when I was 9 years old. I took home a third place trophy. That was all it, right? And I remember going through this, and again, this idea of imposter syndrome, right? Guys, it's always going to be there, right? The older you get and the more experience you get, it's just not as loud and it doesn't show up as often, okay? So I have a PhD in this stuff, and I still find moments of like, do I really know what I'm talking about? So I sat there and I thought, you know what? I'm at this point in my career, if I can't show them and sell them the value of what mental performance can do at the highest level through my experiences in the NFL, through my experiences in Division I, through my experiences working at the Olympics and so forth, then I have no right getting the job. But I also have no need to understand hockey, and I use that as a strength. So I sat down there with the GMs, and we had a great dinner, and that stuff came up. And I used it. I said, look, guys, you know what's great about me not being a former hockey player and actually watching this on a day-to-day basis is I don't understand the tactical and technical decisions. I don't understand how this threads into that. But what I do know is I understand high performance. I understand what it takes, and I understand how it breaks. And here's how I can leverage back to the specialized generalist piece from Range of I can pull from all these different experiences to help this player or this management or this coach with the ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal at the professional level is to win, and win often, and win more than everybody else. So this notion of am I a specialist? Am I a generalist? I think too many of us right now in the industry, we rush to become a specialist, right? It's just like kids sports, right? You're talking about Hunter with long-term athletic development. Our son Cody is an amazing soccer player, but he still plays 2 to 3 sports a year, and he's still training with us, right? Macy is developing into a great basketball player. She's still playing lacrosse, and she's still playing soccer. So don't rush if you're a coach that's developing college, grad school, your first couple of years as an assistant. Don't rush to just be the sports scientist, to just be the return to play person, to just be the nutrition person. Because if you can get a job and fill the roles of 2 or 3 other positions, that's going to give you stability. That may not give you the best financial stability. or the job security, but it's going to get your foot in the door. And then you can start to take the time to specialize and then become the person on that. But I think we've done it too early, too soon, and it's too often. I think it's going to, I won't say it's going to kill the industry, but coaches are just focusing on not all the things. In my professional opinion, they're focusing on very little things and not all the things.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've never participated in track and field a day in my life, and I'm coaching college track. Coach Sullivan never played a day of volleyball in his life.
National championship coach.
National championship, US, like coaching USA U19 team. And for me, like at Springfield, some of my most, if not most impactful development was just standing at volleyball practice. And just like you were talking about being at practice, like being purposeful at practice. It's like I would just stand there and observe. I'd watch the guys, but I would just listen to Coach Sullivan and like how he's communicating. What's he saying? What's his tone like? What are the words conveying to the athlete? So like that was so impactful for me. And I mean, I'm in a position now where like I'm doing, like I have my hand in kind of a lot of different things. So it's honestly pretty fun because I'm in a lot of different areas. And like there's some saying about like you can't be curious about something that you don't know anything about, something like that. So I think, you know, being a generalist, even if it's not you're making decisions on all these things, like it allows you to connect better with people, and it leads to asking better questions and having better discussions with those people because you can speak different languages. Like,
yeah, right. You're speaking coach, you're speaking athlete, you're speaking parent, right? We crush in the private sector right now, not because our training is very basic and it's purposeful and it's fun, but one of the big reasons is, you know what, we're right there with them. Like we have kids their age, right? Our rad dads and bomb moms. I mean, I'm so proud of this adult group community that we created because guess what? We're right there with them, right? We are midlife parents going through the stress of raising kids in a very economic turbulent time and the pressures of trying to provide a better life for our kids that we once had. But you can show degrees of relation, you can show degrees of similarity. And Griffin, this goes back to your point, if we are open to receiving that info, it's just like statistics, right? Bad data in equals bad data out. It'll never work. But instead of just standing there complaining about why you're at practice all the time and not doing anything, are you picking up on the behaviors and reactions from coach's message? And now, and I think there is value in going to practice. I don't think you have to go there all the time, right? And I think a lot of sports in our industry, they're just become institutionalized and they're there at practice or in recruiting or special teams meetings more than anything, which is a waste of time. But what are you doing with that info? And can you use those messages to, again, drive better adaptation to your training? You should, because you are a direct appendage of the sports staff. And I think that's when you know you've made it. When you're in those meetings and the coaches are asking you for your opinions and what are you noticing, Griff, and what are you noticing, Caden? They're trying to take a more panoramic, broad view of the ecosystem that they're trying to create. If you want to be known as Caden the strength guy or Griff the weights and plates guy, that's great. That's only going to get you so far, right? Yep. And so by keeping yourself open to a lot of different experiences and opportunities, that's what's going to keep you in the game. And that's how you're going to periodize your career. A lot of people look at, well, you know, the average person changes careers 5-6 times. I'll say this, right? Just turned 40 this year. I've had a lot of different jobs, but I've had one career in exercise. Yep. It's everything I have done has been intentionally or unintentionally, as it pops up, periodized, right? So it could be nonlinear, it could be linear, it could be whatever we want to make it. But it's always fallen under the umbrella of health and human performance. And that is something that I think a lot of younger, aspiring, developing coaches need to realize, right? You are worth a lot more than what you're getting paid. There's no doubt. And you're worth a lot more to other people in the institution and organization. Are you going to play the long game? And as Brett Bartholomew always said, playing chess instead of checkers. Yep. Can you see what the moves happening in advance? And that's what's going to set you up.
Yeah, and we spoke with this about research too, is, you know, that idea of specializing in something early, and it applies to coaches too. If you don't take the time to establish strong, trustful relationships with individuals, you're not even going to have the opportunity to act as a Swiss Army knife, because people aren't going to, you know, share, you know, things that are personal to them, or they're not going to let you in to help in different aspects of their, you know, performance and in their life. So you spoke with that rad dads community, like, and how you guys can relate to them. Well, relationships are so important. It is the foundation to all good things that are going to happen within the health and performance bucket, in my opinion. So I don't want to dive into it too much, but you kind of touched on it. I just think it is the foundation to all things in our job and our career as individuals who serve, whether we're serving, physically, mentally. So.
Yeah. And I think, well, I mean, I'll dig into it because it's a very valuable point. One thing we all have to remember is that the higher the level we go to, the more human the job actually becomes. It's very easy when you're just starting out to be the rep counter, to be the spotter, to be the weight room maintenance keeper of all eternity, whatever the case may be. The higher you go, and that was a slap in my face when I got to the NFL at 24 years old, because I had come from leading my own program and getting there, and it was establishing culture. It was building something. It was a lot of reps and sets. It was a lot of focus. It was a lot of those leadership and tangible things. I didn't take enough time when I hit 25 to get to the NFL to look at things differently, because it was a lockout season. There was no coaching when I got hired. And then all of a sudden I get back from my honeymoon. They're like, all right, we're broke for camp. We got to go. So all I knew was the coaching that I had done prior. So once I got to that level, again, it was a short year, but I realized I didn't need to be there at that moment in my career. I needed to go elsewhere. But you have to become more human, because now these athletes are dealing, and Katie, you see this, they're dealing with so much more than just baseball. And we become victims of saying, dude, you're getting paid millions of dollars to play catch and hit a ball, right? But it's not that. And I'll never forget this. I was working, when I was with the Panthers, I was the quarterback strength conditioning coach, specialist strength conditioning coach. I assisted with everybody, but like those were my guys, ran the nutrition, the whole thing. We had signed a kicker, short-term deal, and a little bit older, right? And had come into training pretty down, normal stuff. I think we lost the game by a field goal or 1 or 2 extra points, whatever. And went back after the game, bunch of for sale signs in the yard, right? And you guys don't see that at Springfield College, right? Coaches can win or lose. Nobody's going to lose their job, right? But at the highest levels, right? Imagine coming home, you've got a family, you just moved your family over, you don't perform, and you got for sale signs all over the yard. And I remember him saying something about like his son was embarrassed to wear his father's jersey to school because he hadn't been playing well, right? The kid was getting bullied. And this will stick with me forever. He goes, everybody thinks I get paid all this money to make the kick. That's all you have to do, right? And I think that's what actually probably set my groundwork in sports psychology, because I was working with quarterbacks and specialists a lot in my career, even in college. It's a high pressure, very simple task environment, right? Everybody thinks I get paid all this money to make the kick. What they don't know is I get paid all this money to deal with what happens when I miss the kick. And I've never forgotten that in my entire career, because you want to complain about how much professional athletes are getting paid, try living the life that they are living, right? The anonymity, the loneliness, the feeling of insecurity at all times where you can't be yourself. And so when you rise to those levels, and again, you can treat all kids at this level, you have to be more human, right? The earliest version of me, I tried to prove through competence, through complexity. I had charts, I had graphs. I mean, Griff, you got a taste of it last year in class. So I got things on things all over the place, because I'm like, I have to learn more, right? I felt when I became a head coach, everything had to go right. And that's why I still have a super high standard. And I have that ADD of like, it's got to be perfect. And I thought consistency meant doing the same thing for everyone. And I got a hard lesson in that. Now I'm trying to meet my coaches and students and athletes where they're at, not where I want them to be, because what I learned was I wasn't respecting their journey. I wanted them to be where I was. And I'm like, you know what? They're not there yet. I have to meet them where they are, and I have to be okay. You want to be a great coach. I think Hunter was talking about this. Teach an 8-year-old how to an RDL, right? You all want to do these advanced triphasic potentiation clusters, oscillating to teach a kid how to hinge, right? So now I'm more patient. I'm more confident. I allow that readiness, willingness, and ability to happen so that trust can unravel in a good way. And I understand that timing means just as much as the content that I'm trying to remember or regurgitate, right? So whether you're working, and I'll close it up here, whether you're working with youth kids or you're working with professionals, the stakes don't, in a way, let me back up a little bit. The stakes change, but the emotions don't. What your 10-year-old, what your 16-year-old, what your 21-year-old, or what your 44-year-old Phillip Rivers is going through, the stakes will change, but the emotional response is always the same. And if we're going to invest in all of this professional education on reps and sets and times and flies and all of these fancy things that we talk about in advanced strength conditioning, where are these other elemental and primal values of these softer skills of coaching?
Yeah, and that's
You have a little bit more responsibility at home and so than some of the younger kids, but with his 10 children.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
They-
he's just
they-
happy
they
to get out.
can-
He's like, hell yeah, I'll sign however long you guys want. Yeah, just give me a hotel, I'm good, you know.
They panned to like when he was playing up to the booth, and he had an entire booth just for his children alone.
That's awesome.
Leaving his legacy.
Yeah.
But I connect with that because you get here and it's easy to tell which kids wear the emotions on their sleeve a little more, which one feel like there's more pressure on them to perform. Obviously, your higher draft picks, they got to make more money, higher expectations. And it's not even from the players, but the staff. It's easy to tell via staff as well. Are you a little more careful with this individual? Do you have eyes on him longer? Are you spending more time on his program, the details of it? And I understand it from an organizational standpoint of we're investing in this individual and we want to make sure that his path and his journey is as clean as possible. But at the same time, do we realize that these steps wear on that individual as well? Like the athletes aren't stupid. I have the opportunity here where I get to work with a lot of our higher draft picks as they come in, just with the level I'm at, the affiliate I'm at. The kids that, we signed for bigger money down the Dominican that come over. Like I have the opportunity to work with these kids in a time in their career where they're developing, and I'm grateful for that. But it's also easy to see that things are wearing on some of those individuals based on the spot that they're at and how important they are.
It's a careful dichotomy of, on one hand, right, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and then going the opposite way of taking in every feeling and thought and emotion and body language into perspective, right? I believe in grind reps. There's got to be a time and a place of doing hard things and struggling, regardless of what Tendo or GymAware or Elite Form or any other VBT devices out there. Okay. I believe in throwing in some micro dose chaos, right? When we're talking about variable practice and design and this idea of finishers, right? There's purpose in doing hard things, right? It's grounded in sports psychology. It doesn't have to be promoted by Jocko or David Goggins, right? Everybody wants to know who's going to carry the boats. You know what I want to know? I want to know what we as coaches are helping them prepare so that if it's a boat, if it's a team, if the game is on the line, who is going to be not just physically, but mentally ready to handle and tolerate those stressors, right? We're trying to build stress capacity there. But I think before that, and Kate, and this goes to your point, you have to normalize the struggle without lowering your standards as a coach. No matter what you feel, no matter what Griff feels, no matter what I feel, guys, in the moment, your 10 is a 10. And I steal this from East Campus and a lot of work that we do with our mental health support group, Pride Cares on campus. I teach the 101 class now. So you can imagine my level of empathy when I have incoming freshmen complain that they don't have time, that they complain that there's just so much to do. And I'm like, please tell me how hard your life is, right? You take a nap for 6 hours a day. You're not playing a sport. You just unlocked another leaderboard status on Minecraft. Like, settle down. But in the moment, their 10 is a 10. And if we don't have that progressive overload of stressful experiences, right? If we don't have that overload of these hard things in life, that 10 is always going to feel like a 10. I look back at what I thought was a 10 out of 10 and I laugh, right? And Griff, to your point about Phillip Rivers, right? Imagine not just having one kid, but 10 kids, right? Imagine leading a team and having that career. And so every little thing, whether I was working third shift to pay for bills in college, whether I went back to school at 32 years old to support our future family and family at the time, whether it was taking on a new role or working 3 jobs, right? Every level I've chosen has mentally calloused me up with understanding I'm not going to lower the standards for my kids, but I am going to normalize their struggle a little bit. And I think, Caden, back to your point, is you have to continue to be consistent with who you are, not just what you coach. And that in itself is a mental skill, is can you arrive to the facility and can you delay what you're feeling or what you're going through outside, because your athletes deserve your best. But you know what? When you get back home, so does your family. And I remember Mary Kate and I having a really hard conversation about this. We talk about bringing the juice all day, and we were actually presenting at a conference, and she goes, if he's going to go out there and talk about bringing the juice for his athletes, and all of a sudden the glass is empty when he gets home, then we're missing something. And so that in itself is a skill in managing, right? It goes back to the energy envelope. Can you bring the most amount of energy in those circumstantial conditions and ensure that the other people that are important in your life, your kids, your family, your significant others, they get just as much, if not more? And so how do you do that is you balance out more than just physical development. And that's where the mental skills come into play.
Yeah. Okay. It's so fascinating too, because, baseball is known as, the game of games when it comes to being mentally driven.
Right, like how much of baseball is physical versus how much is mental?
Yeah, who cares? I don't need to put a
What
percentage.
did
on
Yogi
it.
Berra say?
It's a question that's commonly asked.
It doesn't matter what if it's 90-10 or 80-20, who cares?
Who
But
cares?
but the point is, there's also, like, baseball's also known as a sport where being a first round draft pick means almost nothing.
Right.
In terms of making the big leagues.
Correct.
Is my point. Obviously you're guaranteed the signing bonus for those guys.
There's a lot of steps along the way, things that have to go right for you
Yeah.
to achieve that goal.
Yeah, but like, what's the percentage of those guys who make the big leagues? You talk about on your team, you might have 1 or 2 guys who make it to the league one day.
Yes.
How many of these guys have all the physical talent in the world to make it to the big leagues, but
People.
can't overcome the mental barriers, or they can't deal with failure? Like, that's huge in sports,
Yeah.
but especially baseball. Like, you have to be able to deal with failure.
And I'll give credit to baseball because they are, you talk about professional sports, they are the overwhelmingly leader in mental performance staffs, like in pro sports, right? You don't have this at the NBA. You don't have this at the NFL. I was with the Detroit Lions this preseason, some high performance stuff with them. And, what do you have over there? I mean, they got one person that clinical psychologist, tries to do a lot of things, can only do so much. American football, you only have so much, right? So, shout out to Coach Caitlin and the rest of the staff and all the other CNPCs out there doing great work, because, Griff, to your point, I'd argue that the whole sport is mental, because you can't do the physical without the mental, right? There is cognition, there's precognition, right? There's metacognition, there's thinking about the thinking, right? And when we look at that and we understand the demands that go into that, back to the challenge of the stakeholders, you say you want to win a championship. You say you want to go longer into the playoffs. What are you doing to invest in our players to make that happen? And for a lot of those guys in baseball, right, and I learned this in hockey too, like, oh yeah, you got drafted. So what? Now you still got to make it through preseason. Then you're going to get sent down. Then you're going to get pulled back up. It blows my mind in hockey right now. A guy gets pulled up. He could get pulled up tomorrow, suit up, not even play, get scratched, and then fly back down 2 days later. All right. Or he gets pulled up and down all season. You talk about the mental bandwidth and capacity to deal with that. I'm good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm good enough. No, I'm not good enough. They said I was good. Just keep working on that. I worked on that, but I still didn't get called up. I mean, wow. Why aren't we doing more work in this space? And that's what we need to do.
And those mental skills go way past the sport. Like, being able to bounce back after that roller coaster of emotions, like, those things happen all the time.
Yeah, you're just creating a more resilient individual, whether that's in sport or out of it.
Yeah.
But we do that in training how, right? We progressively overload the body, right? The organism, to tolerate more stress.
Yep.
Scientifically, we back off when we need to back off, but we push them. And I say this a lot, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record. In coaching, we're so worried about, especially in the pros. So no offense to any pro, if there's any of you out there, for the elite pod right here. We're so driven by minimal effective dose.
Mm-hmm.
Just do the bare minimum, right? And I have such a problem with that. I always have, because if we always settle for the bare minimum, again, I get it, right? Energy envelope, right? If 2 sets of 5 gets it done, great. If 1 flying 10 gives me that exposure above 90% max speed, we're good. If all we ever do is the bare minimum, we never know what their actual maximum effective dose is. And that, I think, you want to talk about making the 1% better. How much can they tolerate, Griff? How much can they handle, Caden? How much work can they do? And what are the skills outside of just squatting, hinging, flexing, extending, rotating that I can help them with, so that their minimum, go back to max speed training, Tony Holler, right? If I expand the range, now all of a sudden that my minimum, my tempo is a little bit easier now.
Yeah.
But we don't do that with mental training. We just make excuses. We say that they're not mentally tough enough. We're not willing to invest these conversations and these hours into the training that could be very well suited, Griff, to your point about bringing in somebody for a workshop, right? Workshops can be great, but you got to have presence, you got to understand the sport, and you got the guys got to trust you. But there's so much magic, and this is what I took away from baseball, working baseball last 2 summers. The amount of one-on-one work you get with guys just hanging out in the dugout, right, or in the bullpen. Just, I mean, the amount of sunflower seeds I've eaten over the last 2 years is mind-boggling, and the amount of sunburns I've gotten, but all worth it, because that's when guys are going to open up, right? They're not going to open up. They're going to share what they're really feeling in a workshop. Why? Because I got my teammates to my left and right. I got my coaches sitting behind us. Yep. So you got to be. It goes back to being intentional, right? And I think a big part of that comes down to, as coaches, are you creating psychological safety, right? You want physical safety 100%, but are you creating an environment that people will be their true authentic selves without fear and repercussions of being shamed, of being judged, of being labeled? And I think when you're the strength conditioning coach and you spend a lot of times with kids outside of the sporting world, that's a responsibility that we have to start looking into a little bit more deeply and more intentional, for sure.
I think about program design, and when you're creating a program and you're going through the program and what musculature are we using, what energy system are we developing, this, that, and the next thing as we create the protocol, how often are we asking the questions of how mentally challenging is this going to be, or where are we missing that, where can we dose that? And Griff, like, I think about when we would go up on the mezzanine and create our track programs, like I think we did a really good job at dissecting the program and challenging our thought processes. But when did we talk about incorporating something that will, provide some mental resilience or challenge them in a way that they haven't been? You know what I mean? And I think about, and coach, please, touch on this if this is something that you do at TFP, et cetera, but there's got to be places that we can incorporate that provide value within a training protocol that, yes, there's going to be a physical component to it, but maybe it's not driven by that, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, everything's context dependent, right? So sure. Let's say we're putting together a curriculum for coaches, right? You wanted to become a coach, or you wanted to start to add a little bit more mental skills training. Never start with content. You always have to start with context. Okay. So if I was designing this for coaches, for you guys, I'd say, all right, number one, like who are you coaching? That you have to know that, because how you frame a message or how you pull in other things, whether it's social media or examples from the real sporting world, is going to depend on, who are the people you're working with. Number two, what environments are they in? What environments are you struggling in? Are you an A-game practice player, and then when you get that opportunity out on the mound or out on the ice or out on the court, you fall and crumble? But I think a big question here is we have to go back to, again, this is the work that needs to be done before the work that you want to be done. You got to invest. It's just like programming. You can't just show, in my opinion, right? I know you've had guests on here that, believe in whiteboard workouts. That's not my style. You have to have a plan. Okay. But what problems will they actually face? And are we being intentional and deliberate and reflective on what is most troubling you? Where are your gaps? Where are your deficits? It's same thing with class design, guys. Like I asked, what do we want to learn in 680? Right? I know what I know what I don't know, and I know what I need to know. If I don't ask you guys for experiences and opportunities, then how are we going to create this a very learning, student-centered environment? It's the same thing with mental skills. So when you're designing any type of program, you want to add in finishers, okay? You want to add in specific coaching directives and cues. You want to help your athletes struggle without you rushing to help them, right? You've got to think about communication before complexity, right? Don't get caught up in, I got to throw in this skill, I got to throw in that skill, right? A big part that I think about is self-awareness as a coach and as an athlete before you start worrying about leadership talks and workshops. And then that ability to be adaptable before you try to master something. So I want my athletes and I want my younger coaches, I want you to leave the session. I want you to leave obviously confident, but I want you to always remain curious. And Griffiths goes back to what you were saying earlier, right? Why are we doing what we're doing? And again, this is a nod to, you can't just throw in this drill to make them mentally tough. Yeah. What is the purpose? What is the reasoning? And how are you going to thread that message into the ultimate goal? Right. Just like intrinsic motivation, right? If athletes do not understand why they're doing it, how it's going to impact them, it's going to be very hard to move kids from externally motivated, so you're extrinsic, or completely amotivated, you give zero cares, to I am doing this for the inherent value and self-worth. I believe in this. This is who I am. And that could be goal setting. That could be emotional regulation. That could be how they respond to group challenges, right? I would love to do a complete product or ebook or a presentation on this, like how to thread all of these in. Love team competitions, but you got to make sure it's at the right time and the right place and the right objective, because as we know in coaching, right, you can throw somebody in the deep end, but their ability to tolerate the deep end for so long without belief in themselves, that could be tragic. So I can't sit here just like a program. I can't just say, hey guys, we're going to do 4 weeks of 8s, 4 weeks of 5s, 4 weeks of 3s, do an open set every third, fourth week, taper down volume, 40 to 60% of reload weeks. I can't give you a generic description, but there is research on periodization of mental skills. Where are you falling in your seasonal plan? Is goal setting really important at the beginning of the season? I would say so. Is reflective goal reasoning important now? I would say it is. Are there elements in gameplay where emotional regulation was dysfunctional? Are there elements of leadership and teamwork that were completely dysfunctional that needs to be worked on? Absolutely. How can we as a coach thread those into our sessions? Welcome to strength conditioning, where it's both a science and an art. And how we do that in exercise selection, how we do that in what I call like variable environment training, you can do a lot of different things. And if we just take some time to sit back and see what will happen if we give enough, not too much, give enough for them to make those decisions and see what happens from there.
Yeah, I think that makes me think about when you consider the questions of like why, how, and what. Like I just finished Simon's book on Start With Why. And he talks about, you know, his golden circle with the why, how, and the what. Like when you talk about the old mental toughness drills, coaches get really caught up in, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to do something that's really, really hard. We're going to, like, I saw some stuff at Michigan State. I was like, this is crazy. Like, this sucks. I would hate to do this. But the kids didn't see the value in it. They didn't understand why they were doing it. So they were sandbagging it. I think back to my athletic career. We would run gassers at the end of practice. It's like nobody saw the value in it, but we did it because it was going to make us tough. But we didn't believe in it. So if we didn't believe in it, then how is it going to make us tough? We're just sandbagging it.
And as a coach, right, this is where I would tie in my experiences of knowing the sport and working with the sports staff. Find me these situations where you felt mental composure was down, drained. People gave up, right? Body language was atrocious, right? As you start to thread in context-specific environments into your training, it has to be repetitive, right? John Wooden said it for years, right? The number one fundamental law of learning is repetition, repetition, repetition. You can't just show up to a motivational workshop, because we all do it, right? We go to conferences. We go to a conference, right? Katie, you probably just came back from winter meetings. You heard some good topics. You're like, great, I'm all fired up, juiced up. I'm going to put this up in on Monday. And then it loses its luster, okay? So just like physical training, you have to revisit these things. Yep. My challenge for everybody, and this is for you guys, if we have primal foundational patterns, we have squats, we have hinges, we have presses, we have pulls, we're always revisiting those. Do you guys disagree? You can disagree if you want. We're always doing variations of that all year.
Sure.
Yep. What are your big rocks, or what are your foundational principles or areas of mental skills development, right? Because confidence is always going to be there. Motivation is always going to be there. Arousal regulation is always going to be there. How can coaches now do a needs analysis? You guys remember those, right? Everybody thinks it's just about writing for the physical demands of the sport. Guess what? Needs analysis is two-part. You're looking at the sport and you're looking at the athlete. And I remember covering this. Kaden may not remember because it was years ago. We take all this time to do physical measures and radar graphs and spider graphs for speed, quickness, agility, isometric mid-thigh pull, peak force. You can do the same thing with psychological skills and qualities. Why aren't we taking more mental inventories of our players and situations? And how are we enlisting the support? And guess what? You don't need a PhD like I got to do all this stuff. We live in the information age that we can filter out good stuff from great stuff and great stuff from really bad stuff. But again, we're focusing so much on the physical characteristics and attributes. When, again, what do I know? 20 years of experience, I'm telling you, stronger isn't always going to get them better. Getting them better always isn't going to help them win games. It's about all the dynamics and everything behind the curtain that's happening. And that's from the coach, that's from the support staff, and that's from what happens inside the locker room and weight room.
Yeah. Successful businesses have a vision, they have a mission, and they have core values, pillars that they lean on. And I think a successful program, successful coach would have the same thing. You know what I mean? And you touched on creating an environment where now these athletes are embodying these values, these pillars, and living them outside of just the weight room. I think I do a great job of creating a strong environment where my athletes genuinely enjoy being in there and training that day. But is that carrying over to the rest of their life? I don't know. Am I doing all I can to create a strong culture that's going to hold up, not just in the weight room with these guys, but are they going to live their way? Are they going to live by these values?
Well, so I'll challenge you here while we're on air. How do you know, though? Right? Are you sending out a post-training survey, a post-seasonal survey? Are you collecting data points? And I don't know what you necessarily would ask in your environment, Kaden, but I fall in that too, right? Again, we believe in the R factor at TF Performance, relationships over results. We focus so much on results without taking care of relationships, they're never going to work, right? If we focus on developing great relationships with kids and their families, the results will take care of themselves. I 100% wholeheartedly believe that, and I've seen it in action. However, if I also don't take in feedback, if I don't listen to when feedback is given to me, even though I may not like it, how am I supposed to evolve and change for the better or reinforce what I'm doing is working? So my challenge to you is, how do you evaluate your own coaching effectiveness, right? You think and I agree, you think you do a good job creating a strong environment where the culture, this, and the other thing.
Right.
But do you need objective data to support that? So what does your evaluations from your supervisors say, if anything? If nothing, then I would challenge them on that. What are some things that you can pull from the players, right? All these, the more amount of data we can pull in, it just helps triangulate the things that we're working on or the things that we're solid on. And going back to, you're right, it's your vision is where you want to go. Your mission is how you're going to do it. And your principles are what guide you into that action. And so ours are across our walls, but we don't, and this goes back to mental skills, right? And back to workshops. We don't just put the words on the walls.
Yep.
We're revisiting them daily. And when I see a violation of attention to detail, I call that out. Right? If I see a violation of all I ask is all you got, we revisit that, right? And our third one, our principle for our athletes is, work hard and have fun. And I've said this before, we all want to have fun, right? Winning's fun, training should be fun, but you got to work hard, and you got to work hard so we can have fun. But I want you guys to work hard and have fun. I want you to have fun working hard. But if you're not giving me all you got and you're not showing me positive body language, that's not going to happen. And I'm revisiting this with 13-year-olds. I'm revisiting this with staff of college athletes and students and whatnot. So it's really a blend of all of these aspects, but this is where the skill is how do you filter this information out, and how do you focus on what's important now? So you can focus on a lot of different metrics. It's just like cleaning and screening data from GPS, right? I get a whole lot of inputs. What am I really going to focus on? And it can be hard to distill that. But again, welcome to programming. We try it. Scientific method. What happened? What data did I get from it? Did this work? Did it not work? How do I move forward?
Yeah. The relationships over results. Coach Griff and I were talking. We were talking about being present the other day. I remember we were texting about this, and I was talking to you about how I feel like a lot of times I struggle being present because I'm so focused on, what does the future look like, and what can I do now to help create the future that I want. And obviously, you have to spend time focusing on those things, but it's always the process that's the most rewarding, right? So how can we make the process where the athletes, or where you in general, enjoy being in? Obviously, you're going to have athletes, especially at my level, that come in with different goals. They come in with different backgrounds. They come in with different mindsets, frames of mind. Some appreciate the process and getting there. Some just want the result. Either way, we know that the pursuit of something is always going to be the most rewarding. It's the pursuit of said thing that's going to create the motivation. Once you get that thing, it's going to be rewarding, but it's going to die off quickly, right? It's the pursuit that's going to, that's truly the strongest aspect of that. So what can we do to create a process-oriented environment, culture, etc.?
So pause there. I agree with you to a point, because the pursuit may not be as advantageous and as pleasurable for everybody. So the question, and I'll give you the answer right away, how do we make the pursuit more enjoyable? Are you building in micro milestones and bright spots along the way? Are you reinforcing the progress? And I think in the strength conditioning industry, we've done a good job with like max testing. I think hardly any of us actually take a day out of the cycle and just all we do is max. Because guess what? If that kid didn't get any sleep the night before, if they're studying, if they're injured, if they had other stressors, they're going to show up that day and they're going to bomb, and then coach is going to look at your report. And or again, I worked for a coach who would just change the numbers. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. Everybody got faster. Everybody got stronger. I'm pretty sure that's not exactly what happens. So how do you make the pursuit more pleasurable, more memorable? and how you frame those coaching moments. How are you recognizing their progress up to date? How are you poking and prodding the kids that need that? Because not everybody, not everybody wants to practice. Not everybody wants to lift weights. You're working at your level. They just want to stand around, chew gum, spit seeds, and hit the ball 400 feet, right? And win a championship. And I see that at the hockey level, right? We're practicing too hard, or, you know, and I'm like, guys, you come in for 9 o'clock, you're out by 12. Like, that's a pretty damn good life. But back to how do we make it more pleasurable so that dopamine response actually triggers and hits and it can resonate with that, is what does that plan of process-oriented goals look like, right? Are you taking their big outcome goal and are you breaking it down into process and performance? Are you publicly recognizing that and praising that in front of the people that matter most? Are you staying in tune? Are you adapting to their goals? Or if they're off the track, how are you getting them back on track? Everybody's going to set a New Year's resolution in the next day. How are we revisiting that? And this goes back to the binary issues of goal setting. You set a goal. If you achieve it, you're a winner. If you didn't achieve it, you're a loser. In the real world is how do you modify and adapt that goal to fit circumstances and life stages? It's the same thing with being a coach, right? Not everything is linear. We can't always add 5 pounds to a squat or bench every week and get stronger. But a big part of that process is that idea of, go back to basic psychological needs, is relatedness, right? How is this goal, how is this individual goal a part of something greater than myself? And how can I be part of something greater than myself? So how are we establishing and reestablishing community? How does this fit inside the culture of what we expect? One of you guys said something earlier about like the effectiveness. How I know what I'm doing is working, because one of my groups I've had for 3 years consistently, I literally have to say nothing once we get to the weight room. They are coaching each other. I've got stud baseball players from a private school coaching 13-year-old prospects. They do all the coaching, and they are the most supportive, psychologically safe, encouraging environment. They're the best group to coach, not because I don't have to coach, but because they're coaching each other. So again, going back to observation and awareness, what is happening around in your situations and environments to allow that to come to fruition?
Have you seen, at least working with the hockey players, honestly, all the populations you've worked with, having conversations surrounding goals, have you seen one goal to be better, more effective than another in the pursuit of it? You know, whether it's a numerical goal, like a baseball player, I want to hit 350 this year, right? Or
yeah,
a goal that's
outside your control.
Right. So you'd recommend goals that are going to be more, like, I remember my junior year, I set all these goals. I had this like little journal, and I want to hit a specific average. I want to get this many hits. I want to make the all conference team. I had like 6 of them, right? And I checked off 3 of them. And I remember looking back and I was like, is this a successful season for me? Because I feel like I played well, but I didn't hit all my goals. And so the next year, going into my senior season, my goals were more, can I look back on this day of practice and say that I, you know, did my best today, or I learned one new thing today, blah, blah. And the result kind of took, you know, care of itself afterwards. Is there a better way to set a goal? Is there a more, you know, efficient, successful frame of mind when you're doing that, et cetera?
No, that's a great question. So two of my favorite frameworks, I've talked about this at length in the past. It's not SMART, because as we both know, right, SMART is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. That goes into the notion of, and it stemmed from like middle managers trying to find out, how do we get our factory workers to be a little bit more efficient here, right? They have to hit numbers, right? But it avoids the 2 things, which I think these other 2 frameworks do a really good job. So one of them is WHOOP, and I think we've talked about this a little bit, and that's grounded in science with Gabrielle Ottingen. What is the wish, right? What is this outcome that you'll get from it, right? So if you wanted to bat 350, right, what is the outcome? The outcome, you know, how's it going to make you feel? What's it going to do for you, and so forth? And the next 2 letters are the most important. What are the obstacles in my way? Like, what I have to pre-think and I have to forecast. What are all the things that have been in my way that I haven't been able to achieve this just yet? Or what are all the things I have to anticipate being my way, right? Travel schedule, a wife, kids, family commitments. You have to, we call this, you know, we're mentally contrasting the things that are in our way. And the last one is the plan. That plan, I think, is the biggest piece here, because Caden, as you said, how do you know if you gave it your best, man? Right? And you're just going to validate it because you don't want your goal to break, right? I'm going to give it my best every day, kid. Yeah, it's like, I'm going to give it 110%. You can't. I appreciate the attitude and effort. So I think a combination of how do we get these goals, you streamline. It's not the outcome. You have to focus on the 2 areas of what are my process goals and what are my performance goals. What is the process I'm going to go through? So instead of you going 4 for 5, again, you can't control that because you don't know what the pitcher is going to throw. You don't know what the situation or scenario is going to be. So it's a performance goal, but it's really an outcome goal because you're not focusing on the things within your power. So you got to look at performance and process, and there's a wealth of literature around that. And the other framework, if you don't like WHOOP, is GROW. And GROW is, what is the goal? And this is where the mental contraster comes into play. But what is your reality right now? Okay. Like, let's be honest, right? You want to bat 350. The reality is, man,
You're a 260 hitter.
You're a 260 hitter sitting in what's the worst batting spot in the lineup?
8,
7 or 8, probably.
Okay. Yeah. All right. See, I know a little baseball. Okay. All right. You want to bat 350, son? You're a 260 hitter and you're batting 8. Okay. So you have to explore that. It's not to belittle them. It's to show them how far this stretch goal really is. And that's why we have to bring it down a little bit. So you have your goal, you have your reality, right? You have this obstacle. All right. And then what is the way? The W, just like the plan. But again, goal setting is so niche specific to the person. Some people do really well with objective stuff. Griff might adapt well to check marks, right? I did my habit. I got a nice check mark. Or I hit my move streak on my Apple Watch. I'm doing a 7-day fitness competition with Macy right now, and who can just move around a little bit because it's break, right? Some people are very, prefrontal cortex driven. They got to see the numbers. And other people are more subjective, right? Do they feel better, right? Do their clothes fit better? What is their outlook on life? But again, I think when it goes back to data management, wellness questionnaires, and all that type of stuff, there has to be an element of tracking because it allows you to pivot. And this is where I go back to when you're chasing the dopamine response. Can you build in these micro segments, right? I was talking about this with our GM. He goes, yeah, obviously we want to win as many games as possible. We 10-game clips. He sets goals with the coaching staff. They think about things. All I care about is the next 10 games. This is what we have to do. And if we hit these, then he gets more money, or they get more money, or they get some sort of perk. But automatically, we shrink the outcome into a more manageable chunk. And I remember my early days in PN. PN's coaching philosophy wasn't about, hey, I want to lose 50 pounds in a year. It was, we're going to master this one habit for 2 weeks. I don't care what else you do. You want to go out drinking, you want to eat fast food, that's fine. All I need you to do is take a multivitamin every day for 2 weeks. Or maybe it was a fish oil, or maybe it was eat protein every time you eat. We get caught up in the nuances of the goal achieving process has to be so outlandish, when in reality, it can be as simple and as pragmatic and realistic as that. But again, if it could be too unhinged, look at 75 hard. You guys familiar with that?
Yeah.
Okay. You did it, Caden, didn't you do it?
I didn't do it, but I know a lot of people that have done it.
Okay. So I did it. I did it during COVID. I was like, I need a jump start right here. I'm going to let myself go. So not grounded in anything other than an influencer, Andy Sella, talking about 75 days of no alcohol, no cheat meals, stick to a diet, 2 45-minute workouts a day, gallon of water. One of those workouts has to be outside, and you got to read 10 pages. Completely unhinged, full out deliberate effort. Some people do really well with that, but it's called 75 hard for a reason. Oh, and you got to take a progress photo. I did it the first time. It was awful. It was hard, but it worked. You know what happened after that? I don't think I exercised for 3 weeks. I wanted to tell myself, oh yeah, now I know I can exercise an hour and a half a day. No, I was burnt out, right? Drinking a gallon. I mean, all that stuff, it adds up. The second time I did it, I failed at like day 21 because I fell asleep reading. I didn't hit my 10 pages, which goes into the notion of if your outcome goal is so fixated on did I get it or did I not get it? If you don't get it, you're automatic failure. And that is what's wrong. It shouldn't be just black or white. There has to be elements of gray in there. And you have to come to the conclusion with the people that are supporting you on this on what that looks like for you in real time.
It's so thought-provoking for me because track's such a sport that is
all objective. It's all numbers.
It's all objective. It's like you get instantaneous feedback about what that performance was, whether it's a time or a distance or a height. It's like, immediately. It's just like one of the reasons we love VBT is because it tells the athlete, like it gives you knowledge of the knowledge of results. You know immediately how fast you move the bar. You know exactly how fast you just ran the 100-meter dash. So like I think often about how can I build in, and like it takes a lot of discipline as a coach because it's easy to get fixated on, okay, I want this kid to run this time in the race. So like it takes a lot of discipline for me to like break it down into like the daily deposits, if you will. Like, what is the process for this individual?
But in a way, could you take that time and can you now make it process oriented? Go back to ranges and weight training, right? I hardly ever write a set of 3 anymore. I usually write sets of 3 to 5 or 8 to 10.
Yep.
Because if they're feeling good, they'll go for 10. But if they hit at least 8, I'm good with that too. So Griff, in your coaching strategy, could you say, all right, I have a trend of numbers, right? I have the X amount of meets. Our goal is 75% of the meets. We want to hit at least this standard, right? So now you have, this is where the shading of grade comes into play, right? Going back to the process, instead of saying, hey, I need you to go out there 3 days for tempo running or 2 days of, 2, 3, 400 meters of speed work, right? How can we make it manageable, but still stretchable in a way? So I can take those objective measurements, right? I want to run a 10 something in the 100. Well, again, go back to mental contrasting. If you're running a 13-100, chances are that's not going to happen. So now how do I blend in these ranges of rewards along the way? Because if they hit that goal, all right, there's that release. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm on track. But if I don't hit that goal, that's okay, because now I have a record of success along the way. And I love this. I remember this app. It was just for weight loss. It was called Happy Scale. It was like the lamest thing.
I have that.
Yeah, but what is great about it is you set an outcome goal and you lose, let's say you got to lose 20 pounds. You lose 2 pounds, it breaks it up and it says, guess what, man? Nice job. You're only 1.2 pounds away to your next goal. And then boom, that release happens. You're like, all right. And a lot of times in these objective outlandish goals of benching, squatting, deadlifting, playing, scoring, all this type of stuff, they're based out of things completely outside of our control. So how do we flip the narrative and how do we shift towards the internal measures of success? And Coach Galway in his books of like the inner game of tennis and all of those like great sports psych books of, I think a lot of goal settings just focus too much on the outer game. Is we have to look at the narrative on the inner game and what is going to bring us happiness and joy, and what is going to show us market improvement, and what's going to remind us that we're still doing a great job.
I got a question, Coach, before we kind of transition to wrapping this up. Is, obviously your resume is extensive. You worked with a lot of coaches, a lot of athletes, different levels, different populations. More so for, any coach, but young coaches, like what's the best piece of advice you think you've gotten?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think it comes up a lot in life. One of the first piece of advice I got was from a book. And if people have listened to me before on podcasts, I said this, but it is make the big time where you are at. Mm-hmm. Because as the author, it comes from a book I read when I was probably about your age in coaching, where the big time isn't what's at the end of the road, it's the road itself. And this goes back to what you guys talked about the pursuit. Okay. Every single one of the people listening to this or watching this, and even yourselves, you're going to achieve some sort of big time status that is externally validated by your family, your peers, a bonus. You're going to feel like you've made it. And I hate to remind you, but you're going to feel pretty lonely. You're going to feel pretty empty, and you're going to be feeling pretty existentially like that's it. And I say this and I remind my students of it all the time. Guys, I know you're rushing to get to the end of the semester. You guys were rushing to graduate, right? All you had to do was graduate. All you had to do was defend your portfolio. That was what was at the end of the road. And if that's all you focused on, I feel bad for you, because you lost out on so many great opportunities along the road. And so the book, Frosty Western, he was a Division III football coach for a number of years. He would talk, make the big time where you're at, right? You don't have all the resources and facilities, right? What would Jocko say? Good. Okay. You're not making a lot of money. Good. Right. You can focus on prioritizing your budget on what really you need to survive and parts to thrive. Right. If you don't have everything, are you making the most of the things that you have? And so, first piece of advice, and again, I learned that maybe 18, 19 years old, make the big time where you are, because it's way more than what you think is at the end of the road. It's the road itself. And then the second one, it was like act as if, and I got this from my boss, who's now in the military now. He was my boss at the Citadel, Frank Wintrick. You want to be a professional strength conditioning coach? Are you acting like a professional baseball strength conditioning coach? Do you want to be a head track and field strength conditioning coach? Are you acting like a head track? And I'll throw respect to Dan Vega. SC strength legend, Miami Marlins just came back to campus, and he talked about this idea of like projecting things into existence. and it seems a little woo-woo. It's not. It's self-fulfilling prophecies, right? If you put yourself out there and you believe that you're going to achieve something, naturally your feelings and behaviors are going to align with that. All right. If you go back to being in a slump, right? If you feel like, all right, I'm in a slump, coach says I'm in a slump, he just says to keep swinging, eventually I'll get out of it. But if you feel like you're a loser, you're going to start preparing like a loser. So maybe you're not taking BP as intentional as you were. Maybe you're not approaching the mound or the plate, all right, as deliberate. And maybe you're not reading the scouting reports and checking the pitch sheets and all that. So all of these thoughts and feelings, behaviors start to manifest itself into a perpetual cycle where all of a sudden, what's the point? You reinforce exactly what's the point. So learning the act as if model, right? So many of us want to do or get to the next level, and we are not doing the things and putting ourselves in position to act like we're at that level, right? And this is a challenge I give to superiors and head coaches and managers. Like, grow your people, give them opportunities, right? If they become a head coach, don't let that be the first time they have to have a difficult conversation with the GM or looking at a budget sheet or ordering equipment. At TFP, I think you guys know this, but like, I have standards, I have a mission, but like the staff is so involved in programming and how we do things because they have to learn. And what better place to learn when, guess what, there is money on the line. And we had an issue this year. We had a new coach start, and for some reason one of the athletes didn't feel that it was super welcoming, and it was the experience he had in the summer. And the mom let me hear about it, and then I chirped back and explained what really happened and this and that. And that person never came back. And I said, all right, I'm at a point in my life. It hurts, but I can afford to lose a couple $100, right? But what did we learn from this experience? So if you want to act as if a business owner, are you putting yourself in the position mentally and environmentally of being a business owner? So I'll leave you with two. There's a whole bunch more, but make the big time where you are and act as if you want to be at that next level. What are you doing to set yourself up and preparing yourself to be at that level? Start acting like it.
Dude, I mean, that was hour and a half just went by and I didn't even realize that was, and I think the basis of what Coach Griff and I want when we decided to, start this is we want to learn from people. And we kind of knew what this episode was going to entail, but for me to, have an entire page of notes and that time to fly by, it speaks to, you and obviously your knowledge and the things that you've endured and experienced and are willing to share. And Coach Griff, you got anything before I ask him that last question?
No, I think if we fast forwarded in time to tomorrow, like 24 hours from now, we could still be in the same conversation.
For sure.
I'm open. I'm available. Good to go.
This is how I learn, talking through different things, asking questions, challenging thoughts. And that's something that you've definitely done, well for a long time. When Coach Saz recommended to have you on here, he was talking about how when he went in to defend his program one year, just why, right? Just picking our brains, challenging our thoughts, and it makes you better. And so, looking back, it's like, Coach Feit could call on you at any point in class. I got to be ready to, answer. That's the thing. Those are the things that make you better. And to me, it shows how much you care about your students, and you don't get that everywhere. You don't get that from everyone. So that's a testament to you, Coach.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. It is a challenge that is met with a lot of resistance from faculty members, from administrators, from students. And I'll leave you with this before I guess you're going to ask one final question. But you guys might know, like, I have a bulletin board in my office that sits across from my desk, and I started saving them. I don't have them all over the years, but when I started teaching full time, I went through my own transition of like, what am I doing? Like, I belong in a weight room. Like, I don't have this degree. I never really graduated. Like, I still have nightmares about like, this doesn't really exist. But you're going to be met with a lot of resistance. You're going to be met with a lot of people that challenge who you are and what you do and why you do it. And this is a message, not just as a teacher, but as coaches, right? You're going to work in an administration organization that's not going to agree with you. And you're going to go through your trials and tribulations. But I keep that bulletin board, and every thank you card that I get from a student or an athlete, it goes up on there, because we all have those days where you're like, what is the point? Why? It's not even worth it, right? They don't understand what I'm trying to do. And then it takes a moment of little self-loathing, and then you get over it. And then I take a look at that and I'm like, okay, right? So when it's opportunities like this is a full circle moment, right? Like, two former students ruling the world of health and human performance, running their own podcast. And allegedly I've been a guest that's been requested by that's, I won't say what it's about, but that's what it is a part of. And that is what's part about finding your people and growing and giving back. Because at the end of the day, right, and I think this goes into like that old poem of like fill in the dash, right? We've all got a birth date and an end date, right? Those are outcomes. Those are origins and outcomes. And how are you going to fill the dash in between those dates? What life will you serve? What purpose will you give to the people around you? You can do it with family. You can do it with friends. You can do it with the industry. You can do it with whomever, whenever. But at the end of that day, when that eulogy is read, what will that message be? And I'm just grateful that I was lucky enough to find a career and to find my spouse and to build a family so anchored in something I truly love. And that happens to be strength conditioning and sports psychology and just in the overall development of making better people.
Something Ted Rath talks about, if you know Ted, talks about, are you living for your resume or living for your eulogy? So, hey, that's a message that resonates with me.
Well.
Kind of a heavy hitter. Like, it does make you reflect on, like, what am I doing today that's going to lead to that? But I think, the last question we like to ask people, and we need to limit this now to one person, thanks to Zach Jungles, who has us scheduled out through 2030 with the amount of people that he recommended, but someone that you would want us to have on in the future, someone that you recommend.
You got to go with MK.
All right.
And I'm not saying that because I'm her husband, even though that's how I introduce myself in this industry.
I guess there's bias.
No, here's why. And I'm going to be very deliberate and intentional about this. Okay. For those of you viewing, we all look very similar. We all come from very similar backgrounds. We all present very similar opinions. They're going to differ in different shades of complexity and severity and whatnot. But marrying MK and seeing the world, or trying to see the world on how she sees it as a female strength conditioning coach, and as a mother, and as a program director, that's when we talk about levels of empathy, when we talk about levels of trying to put yourself in your clients' and athletes' positions, right? Your 10s are a 10. Trying to do everything I can to see the world from her eyes has made me the professor and the coach and the father and the husband that I am today. And I say, and I'm recommending her because it's really, really important that if we're talking about high performance, if we're talking about integration, if we're talking about inclusion, we need to make sure that you have multiple voices and multiple perspectives being heard. Otherwise, we just become an echo chamber, right? We get on here and we talk about the latest training, advanced methods, and we talk about our experiences in professional sports. So I'm going to challenge you with her, and hopefully you can find some schedule time with her. Yeah. But then also consider who else could benefit from this podcast. Who else could be a guest that, you know what, they may not have that opportunity. Maybe they come from a different background. Maybe they're a big time coach, but nobody knows about them because they're not wearing that fancy logo or they're not at that conference. And so I'm going to put, again, another challenge. I know I've challenged you guys a lot. It doesn't stop. Once you're in the Coach Feit tree, you're in it for life. Okay. But it's very important that if we want to continue to evolve our profession, we need to do everything that we can to give a platform to people that may not have that opportunity or may not just be seeking that opportunity because of all the other priorities that they have in life. Right?
100%.
Yeah.
I do a lot of these because I love them and I make time for them, and it's great to connect with, colleagues now like you. But let's start there, and that'll be my challenge for you in 2026 is bringing together such a wide variety of diverse perspectives and experiences to really bring this and these types of conversations to the level it deserves.
I love that, because I remember when Coach Griff and I were kind of talking about doing this is, okay, it's a strength and conditioning podcast, sports performance podcast, sure, but we want to welcome all types of leaders, all types of individuals that are in this space on here, and obviously we have people in mind and people that are, may not be in our direct world that can influence the way that people in our world think and act. So that's an awesome point. I know we've kind of thought about that, and for you to reinforce that for sure.
Yeah.
Well, all I can say is thank you, Coach. Thank you for making it happen. We know you're busy. We know, the people are going to be happy about this one, but just internally for me, like I've already learned so much from you, and then to have another, hour and a half with you, I learned a lot more. And I hope that we can have you back on at some point to continue to learn and continue to have these conversations. I took things away from this conversation today that I'm going to, work to implement as soon as I get back. You know what I mean? In a few
Well,
weeks.
I will hold you accountable to that. And however
Absolutely.
you cut this up and write this up, I want a checking for understanding. What did you really learn? All right. Put it out there on the socials, because
For sure.
that's how it all, man, we're always learning. And man, teachers aren't doing the teaching. Teachers are doing the learning too. And so I appreciate you guys for always pushing the envelope of what is possible, not just in the weight room, but also in the classroom, and how we can best serve the leaders of tomorrow. Because that's what you guys are now. That's what you guys will be tomorrow. And that's what you guys will be in 10, 15, 20 plus years from now. So thank you for letting me be a very small part of that journey. And I'm excited to continue to hear and stay in touch with what's up ahead.